To me, Pumbaa strikes me as one of the ones that, I mean, it is really quite finely animated, frankly, because I think, when I watch the action and the motion, it seems really, really, really hard to turn that muzzle in perspective, all the different ways that you do,
Yeah.
all the different times. So this is Pumbaa's your first time supervising that animation. What was that like when you get that opportunity? Because, on the one hand, this is a step up for you. On the other hand, I've heard that The Lion King was sort of the picture that no one yet believed in. So
Yeah.
for you as a lead, does that feel like there's greater freedom because people aren't looking forward to this one as much, or does it feel more intimidating because you're in a lead position?
Um, I mean both really, but the first is true in that it took a lot of weight off of us to know that, but it also put a chip on our shoulder, I guess, to prove ourselves. But us being a very young green group, and I'm talking about down the line on The Lion King. The directors were first timers, the supervising animators, heads of department. There was barely anybody that had actually been in that role on The Lion King. It was probably the most green. I tell this all the time, and probably the most green crew on a film since Snow White. Because that was like everybody was new at making a feature on Snow White. So, but for us, it was the main guys that had the most experience had already moved on to Pocahontas and including Glenn Keane and stuff. So it was a lot of the junior animators that got promoted. It was a lot of the, assistant layout people that got promoted ahead of layout and all that kind of stuff. And so it was a pretty extraordinary thing. And yet, and I didn't really think about this is where the second part of your question, like, because because it because nobody really thought that much of Lion King, it felt kind of experimental. It felt kind of like we'll see what happens with this, and there may be some changes halfway through that we might have to make. Like the studio was like really leery about it, and there was some changes in casting and roles for the animators early on, but not too much. Mostly, we all took on the mantle that we were given and rose to the occasion and made a film that we were really proud of. And we just every step of the way we fell in love with the story of Lion King more and more. Because I'll tell you, Wes, when they first pitched it to us, I remember going to an early meeting where the directors, Rob and Roger, who had never directed together, and both had never directed a feature before, and they were pitching this idea, and it was like, and Don Hahn, who was a very experienced producer, was there too, and I remember them putting a spin on it of like, well, it's it's something like it's Shakespeare in the Serengeti with music by the Rocket Man. And we were like, what? And we'd come off of doing all these films before this that was, very Broadway-esque, very, Howard Ashman, Alan Menken. And we were like, okay, I know what that is because we've done a couple. We've done Beauty and the Beast, we've done Aladdin by that point. And now we're rolling on this thing, and it's like, oh, it's a musical because that's what we do now. But Howard and Ashman and Alan Menken are not part of it. Now we got Elton John and this guy, Tim Rice, who nobody knew. And it was like knowing who Elton John was and not knowing who Tim Rice was and not seeing how songs with, and because they also said, well, we want it to be part Bambi too. It's got to have that draftsmanship and quality of realism in the anatomy and the drawing of the animals, the understanding of the animals, like Bambi. And so we were trying to go like, well, how does that fit into this raucous kind of Elton John musical with these kind of more, are they realistic animals? So trying to find the tone of that and what it was because it was so unique and original, but also borrowing upon things that we had already done in the way of a musical. We just couldn't comprehend it for a long time. It was confusing. And yet somehow it came together. And I think it's really just the will of the crew. I want to say even more than, and I really feel like the directors would say this too. the will of the crew to prove themselves, to make something of it that really brought it together.